getting into our mnemonic map from this class. So we discussed the histogram plot, which is really has a lot of, histogram is pretty standard, but it has a lot of extra add-on features that we can do. One of them was, where what's in the bin is that we're able to control, instead of filling up the bins with the count of us, the count of the time the data falls within that bin, we can actually say, hey, instead of taking the count, put in the average of another column. So it allows for us to bring a little bit of bivariate analysis into our univariate analysis. The thing that I love about this is that we can also put the box plot above this and give us a good sense of where the outliers start, and it's really valuable in if you're trying to truncate the outliers. It can be a little bit faster than using something in Seaborn to get the exact type of plot. Okay. We also discussed the violin plot, which I prefer the Seaborn plot version of this one. It has kind of a different effect, and if you're looking for that effect, it works well. It allows you to stack or to layer your violin plot, so you can really notice those subtle differences between one of the classes in your data set, and can be really valuable in that sense. Okay. I really like the sunburst plot that we talked about next, which allows us to look at the hierarchical groupings of our categories. This is it's actually a very valuable analysis. There's not much you can do in your categories, and Plotly really brings it home in some of the other things that you can do outside of a pie plot or a count plot. So understanding the hierarchical ordering of your categories is really valuable to understand the impact they're having on this plot. It is a little bit tricky to use with a category that has many classes, but the interactivity allowing you to kind of focus in and go into those subgroupings can be very valuable. Okay. Tree map is the one we looked at next, and this allows you to organize your plot, and it works well. You have a lot more space to work with in this one, so it works well when you have a category with a lot more classes. But as you'll see in the workbook, we can actually zoom into each class as well and get many levels of detail should we want to, so you can really do your next steps of your data analysis right in the plot instead of going back to pandas. And that's kind of, although maybe it's a little bit more work to get Plotly set up the first time, it saves you a little bit of time in having to go back to your actual data frame and explore the data. You can get your understanding right in the plot, and the tree map is a really good example of being able to do that. We then discussed the density heat map, okay, that shows us kind of like the heat map that we have in Seaborn, shows us little grids of really where, the most activity is. We use it often in correlation where the highest values are. Really, and it allows us to understand when we have lots of data, see really where that data is. A cool thing that kind of takes this, makes it a little bit different than the heat map in Seaborn, is that we're able to plot on the marginal axes the value of plot, the box plot or the histogram plot, and so it allows for a lot more, it kind of expanding on the analysis that you can do with the heat map. It really allows you to plot more of the bivariate relationship than you would want to put a correlation matrix into this. Okay. Then we looked at the contour density plot, which is very similar to the KDE plot, and it allows you to visualize the levels of density in your plot between that bivariate relationship. It's pretty valuable, truthfully, when you think that you can add in then the count or the value that's actually represented by each layer or level of density. I find that just something that Seaborn could really use. It's like, oh yeah, there's more density here, but how much is actually in each one of these rings? And it's kind of a very valuable feature of the contour density plots in Plotly. We next talked about the 3D scatter plot, which has become one of my favorite plots. It allows for a really detailed analysis that really can't be done in any other way. Cool features that you're able to kind of zoom in. A cool feature is that you're able to really zoom in and go kind of walk around inside your data, which is just a really handy and kind of a cool little feature that you can do. Okay. The next one that we talked about was the line plot, which is great for really high level time series analysis. I like the 3D scatter plot more. I think it's a lot more practical in most situations. The line plot is great for when you want to compare time series analysis, and maybe you're curious how a third factor is impacting not just time, but the x value that you're concerned about, but then another feature on top of that. Okay. The choropleth plot is very valuable when you want to highlight regional patterns. Okay, so kind of like if you could look in states in America, countries in the world, it's very selective when you need to do that, but when you do, it's kind of a good plot because to build your own would be it's a little bit of work to do. Okay, and so today we used a lot of mnemonics to help us really just help it make it easier to come back to the knowledge that we learned today. We looked at lots of unique, logical images because that's really just how our brains work. We remember things that are unique and illogical a lot easier. So the pictures are weird, but that was meant to be to help the way our brains work to help you remember the concepts that we talked about today. We use color and word associations. We talked a lot about in 3D spaces. One of your jobs from here would be to go back and review all of the material that we discussed. There's a little bit more on each slide, but I think as you see with the workbook, play around with the workbook and then kind of visit this, use this as your cheat sheet, your guide to deal with each one of these concepts. Okay. So thank you so much for joining me for the presentation, and I'll see you over in the workbook.